Major League Baseball, you could dream with no limits. You could become your hero.
Oh, he's done it again!
Steal the show. Or even start a new club. You could meet the moment and exceed the hype. You can write a new chapter of history and let your city dream again. This season, anything can happen.
Welcome back to Hack Job. Today, we're with the Gilberts. Okay, guys, are you ready to see your new kitchen? Me too, let's go. Take a look. Oh, there we go. It looks amazing.
He didn't do anything. We just put Bud Light on the counter.
Exactly. It totally opens it up. We gave it a fun vibe. Clearly, this is a room people want to hang out in.
It's the sure sign of a good time. Just right taste of Bud Light. Here we go.
Oh, the landscapers are here. Nice.
Almost perfect. His speed and control are brilliant. Ernie Banks is just one victim of his 11 strikeouts. He gets flawless support from his teammates before 59,083 fans, a record turnout in Shea Stadium. When he strikes out Al Spangler, he's pitched 8 full innings of scoreless, hitless baseball. Nancy Seaver holds back her emotions as a huge crowd watches every pitch. The first Cub up in the 9th. Randy Hutley tries a spoiling bunt, but Seaver throws him out. 2 outs to go to a perfect game. Jim Qualls, a rookie outfielder, is up. A clean hit to left center field. And there goes the perfect game. But there's a standing ovation for Seaver by 59,000 fans. It's still a near-perfect game when Don Kessinger flies out to end it. And it's a vital victory for the Mets. Back-to-back wins shake up the Cubs.
A can of Old Bay, a dock worker from Locust Point, a doctor from Sinai, a hairdresser from Patterson Park, and a firefighter from Glendon. There's a 4th grader from Friendship Academy, and a lacrosse star for Boys Latin, a Catholic priest, and an Orthodox rabbi, a grandma from Dundalk, and a drummer from Hamilton. What's inside a can of Old Bay? You are. Old Bay. For 75 years, it's been the can that connects us.
When I talk of family, I have been very blessed. From the time I started, from the time I joined the major leagues, from the time of my marriage, from the time that I stand here with this fraternity behind me, which now has become another part of my family. Family that means so much to you in different ways because they touch so many different parts of your life. Family which is the heart and the essence of the soul of our very lives. And it's so great to have so many wonderful people in so many wonderful corners. And the only 2 people that are not here today, which I would want to be here, and I miss very much. The one guy that taught me what it was like to be a professional, how to really be a pro, Gil Hodges. If all these other people taught me how to get here and what to do when I got here, Gil Hodges told me how to be a pro and stay here. The most important man in my life from the professional standpoint of my career. And God, I know that you're letting Gil look down here today, and I know that he is part of this. And the other person who is watching now, God love her, my mom.
The next 2-2. Davis to left and will hit. Oh my! It's gone! Santa Maria!
From high atop the Robinson Gearing Studio Complex and straight out of God's country, Pawleys Island, South Carolina, the Litz Talk Baseball Podcast Network proudly presents Backwards K-Pod. And now, here's the host of the show, Jake Robinson.
I never move in slow-mo. Welcome to my dojo. Those other parts are so-so. I'm chill like bro, yo. Focus like a GoPro. Rip it up this promo. Check out the scoreboard. Bring something with no nose. It's going. No, it's gone. Your heart just stopped. Cause Jake got strong and mighty. Undefeated, I mean it. Pull up the box, scroll it down, then read it. Written, produced, directed, and mixed. Dog on your lips and Ozzie Smith backflips. Pick a tip, any tip, get onto it. I got ridiculous pods without forcing it. You sit at home crying like a girl while I spread the gospel around the world. Yo, the pods are written behind tracks that mixed it smooth with the groove to make ears wanna listen. Had a little cut and a rhythm to back it up. Another show to my name, now watch me stack them up. You think another white rat back, but this ain't no act jack. My hobbies are rhyme, some people try to be black, but that about time I come out, call the show BKP, now let me turn it out. Yo, name Jake the Snake, born in 71. Date, you know what time it is, I'm packing them guns. Your experience, I've been a witness to glory, and that's why I collect ball players and their stars. You heard? So, once again, back is the incredible, the pod animal, Jake the Snake Robinson from the Let's Talk Baseball Podcast Network. I'm coming out of Pawleys Island, South Carolina. Half man, half podcast machine. Back in the Captain Kirk chair, shields down, photons up. Prepare to engage on this week's digital audio program that I call Backwards K-Pop, where we collect ball players and their stories. What's cracking, seamheads? What's juicy? Welcome back into the dojo this week for yet another scintillating episode, Chapter 129 of the Grassroots Baseball Podcast Show spanning the globe. Backwards K-Pod, a historical and biographical account of all the players, personalities, characters, stadiums, moments, and pop culture references that have laid the foundation of the product that we love and consume so fervently today as Seamhead nerds. I see a lot of encouraging things about baseball these days. The product has probably never had a stronger global profile than it has right now. I mean, everyone is making money, hand over fist. The ballparks throughout the majors have had great crowds show up, except for, your usual suspects. And, of course, the game is always going to have possible labor strife on the horizon, which, like it or not, is just collateral damage that is to be expected with the chunk of cash that's involved here. We'll continue to have these mini baseball soap opera crises like Otani and his shady interpreter. That's going to last a few weeks till seaheads get bored. Now it's, why the pitchers get injured. Now, I don't know. Maybe it's because pitchers are doing one of the most unnatural body movements over and over again with maximum torque and mechanical violence. Now, surely there are factors involved, but for the most part, that is the simplified answer. And we'll have these little fires and skirmishes throughout the season, all this minutia. But the game itself looks very healthy. It looks very much like the game that I fell in love with all those years ago. Just an upgraded and evolved and more modern version. I personally still love it. It still stirs something inside of me. And that's why I do the show. Hello, everybody. It's your boy, the good Reverend Snake Robinson, presiding over the congregation of good brothers and sisters this week, as my number one goal in my time on this planet is to preach the gospel of baseball to the world. And we got more ground to cover than Joe DiMaggio out in center field of Old Yankee Stadium this week. I'm ready to take the bump and give you 9 today. So let's get all you remaining stragglers still hanging out on the platform here at Terrapin Station. Kiss and hug your loved ones goodbye. Climb aboard our Seam Diesel as we have quite the adventure in front of us this week. I'm so ready to get after this week as we will bear witness to the rising of a true star in the baseball universe. This week, ladies and germs, I give you the life and career of the one and only Tom Terrific, the greatest Met to ever strap it up, the franchise, Tom Seaver. And I see my felonious feline of a co-host, Charlie Guns, setting up shop in the conductor's booth, ready to tip the celestial scales and take us on our way. So, as I look to the west of Terrapin Station, we can see right down that left field line into our beautifully manicured jewel box crib. Looks like a full house tonight as the BKP-9 has already taken the field in anticipation of tonight's game. The pitcher has completed his warm-up tosses. Our fearless catcher has gone down to second base. The infielder is tossing that ball around the diamond, and the umpire is called play ball. So that's my cue, as always, to call. All aboard! Wave goodbye to the fans in the stands. While we won't be gone for a lifetime for them, it will have only been 2 minutes, and you'll have plenty of time to come back and watch the game. As IWAP Gunners set our time and destination for November 17th, 1944, Fresno, California, where our story of the great Tom Seaver begins. So, hurry, step right up. Get in where you fit in. We have plenty of room on our state-of-the-art BKP time travel scene diesel. We have a spacious lounge, or you can find yourself individual cabins with real-time speakers and video. Take off your shoes, open your kimonos. Ladies, rip off those bras. Let the sisters hang. We don't judge. Whatever you got to do to get totally relaxed and comfortable, by all means, mi casa es su casa. And as Gunner picks up the necessary quantum speeds to hit 1.6 gigahertz of RF on our spectrum analyzer, ripping through wormholes and interdimensional portals to get us back to Fresno, California, November 17, 1944, I really thought long and hard about this week's topic, Tom Terrific. And he truly was among the cast of the first great pitchers in my lifetime when I went back and thought about it. In fact, he may have been the best of them. There was Seaver, Carlton, Jim Palmer, Nolan Ryan, Fergie Jenkins, and Gaylord Perry as, like this big 5 or 6 when I started watching baseball. And I was a generation removed from the days of Sandy, Marichal, Drysdale, and Gibson. I really never had ambitions or the desire to pitch as a kid, but if I did, I would have tried to emulate Terrific. I mean, he was as mechanically perfect a right-handed pitcher as there's ever been. Been a lot of talk this week about how pitchers keep getting hurt because every pitch is max effort. Which I think is preposterous. Like guys like Brady Johnson and Nolan Ryan didn't give max effort on their stuff. I'm here to tell you, Tom Seaver was a max effort guy every single fucking pitch. And the thing I remember most about Seaver, whenever I saw him pitch, was that patch of dirt on the right kneecap of his uniform. Every single game I ever saw him pitch, by the end of his start, he had that spotty blotch of mound dirt sullying up his otherwise fairly pristine uniform. And the secret behind his powerful mechanics was his incredible core and everything below the waist. He was the classic push and drive pitcher. Now, many pitchers have tried it. Very few are very good at it. But no one has mastered it mechanically and as efficiently as Tom Terrific here. Meaning, he literally used the pitching rubber the way an Olympic swimmer kind of used the wall to push off on his next lap. And many times in still photographs of Seaver in action, you see at the end of his windup, his whole leg beneath his knee is literally lagging on the mound as he is getting every ounce of push and propulsion off of the slab. Thus, the patch of dirt on the kneecap. And the second thing I always think of when I think of Tom is 98.8. As baseball has often been described as a game of numbers, fans, reporters, and historians of the game most surely recognize the benchmarks like 511 wins for Cy Young, 4,256 hits by Pete Rose, 2,632 consecutive games by Cal Ripken Jr., DiMaggio's 56-game hit streak. And one of these indelible numbers for me was Tom Seaver, 98.8. That was the percentage of votes Seaver accrued by the Baseball Writers of America on January 7th, 1992 to earn induction into the National Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York. And no player had ever received a higher approval rating, and it was the highest percentage of votes ever given to a player before Mo Rivera in 2019. Few players were ever more connected as a franchise player than Tom Terrific with the Mets. And no other member of that organization is as intricately associated with their meteoric rise from the laughingstocks of baseball to world champions. Seaver was an immediate success upon arriving in New York in 1967. His miracle season 2 years later was highlighted by the game of his career against the divisional rival Chicago Cubs. And he continued to pitch brilliantly in the 1970s, blowing away 10 consecutive Padres in a game, collecting at least 200 strikeouts for 9 straight seasons, and becoming the first right-handed pitcher to win 3 Cy Young Awards. In 1977, an ugly contract squabble with the club in collusion with New York sports columnist Dick Young, spreading fake news about Tom's wife goading him into demanding more money than Nolan Ryan on the new free agent market. That led to what became known as the Midnight Massacre, a trade to the Cincinnati Reds that devastated the Mets organization and drove countless fans away into the arms of the Yankees. After a 5-year exile from Queens, New York, Seaver returned in 1983, and although he wore socks of a different color scheme in the end, he did save a spot of crowning achievement for the New York fans to enjoy. And here we are, folks, tearing through that last wormhole and straight into November 17th, 1944, Fresno, California, where parents Charles and Betty Seaver are now welcoming their new son, George Thomas Seaver, into the world. His mother, Betty, the homemaker, and his father, Charles, who was an executive with the Bonner Packing Company that harvested and shipped raisins all over the world. The Seavers were an athletically minded family unit. Charles had been a Walker Cup golfer in his youth, and the family spent many a summer California days swimming, surfing, and playing volleyball together. When Tom is 9, he joins the North Rotary baseball team in Fresno Little League as a pitcher and an outfielder. Within 3 years, he had pitched a perfect game and was batting a robust .540. He enrolls at Fresno High, a school that had already graduated pitching luminaries such as Jim Maloney, Dick Ellsworth, Dick Selma. And even in high school, he was regarded and remembered as a thinking man's pitcher. He knew how to set a batter up for his trap, and he would devour his prey like a black widow spider, painting the black and inducing pop-ups and strikeouts. After graduating from high school in 1962, Seaver registered at Fresno City College while working with his father in the raisin trade, and he also put in training time with the Marines. Scouts began to notice his pitching repertoire after his sophomore year when he wins 11 straight games while setting numerous school strikeout records along the way. And scouts took notice, and so did Rod Dedeaux, the legendary baseball coach who led the University of Southern California to 11 College World Series titles. Dedeaux asked Seaver if he would be interested in joining the Trojans his junior year, and terrific obliges. But first, to prove his reputation is as good as advertised, and to earn his scholarship spot, Seaver goes to Alaska to pitch for the semi-pro Gold Panthers. In 1965, Seaver goes 10-2, striking out 100 batters in 100 innings at USC. And only one MLB team showed interest in the SoCal phenom, and that was the Atlanta Braves. The Braves were so enamored by the physically gifted right-hander that they drafted him in January and signed him a month later. And you would think that the young Seaver kid would have like this traditional affinity for a California team like the Dodgers or the Giants. Probably not the Padres so much back then, but growing up, Seaver was a diehard Braves fan. He would always say that Hank Aaron was his hero, and he loved Eddie Matthews and Joe Adcock, and they had the best uniforms in the league. So he was thrilled to be selected by his boyhood team, and he was chomping at the bit to test himself against the best. But as much as he adored the tomahawk, Seaver would never wear it across his chest. MLB rules prevented any organization from signing a college player while his season was still in progress. And even though Tom had yet to pitch in 1966 in college, the U.S. season was technically underway when Atlanta signed their prized prospect. Commissioner William Eckert voided Tom's contract, and with the Braves on March 2nd, 1966. Now, if other teams were willing to match the $51,000 offer that the Braves signed Tom for, then they were permitted to participate in a lottery for his services. And 3 teams stepped up, willing to match Atlanta's offer: the Indians, the Phillies, and the Mets. And I should note here that $51K in 1966, it has the spending power of about $500,000 today after you factor in inflation and growth of the game and the dollar, I guess you could say. The lottery was conducted on April 3rd, and the questions remained. Would Seaver join Sam McDowell and Sonny Siebert and Cleveland's rotation? Or was he going to grow from the third option and Filthy's rotation behind starters Jim Bunning and Chris Short? But the baseball world was rocked when the lowly New York Mets, the losingest team in the majors year after year, and perennial laughingstocks, won the rights to his services. Seaver earned a $61,000 signing bonus from the Metropolitans and begins his professional career in Jacksonville, Florida, pitching for the Mets' top farm club. He finishes the year going 12-12, throwing 4 shutouts, spanning 188 International League hitters. He seizes the opportunity and marries his high school sweetheart, Nancy Lynn McIntyre, his best friend and confidant in life, who stood by her husband through the good and bad times till the very end of his circuitous journey. After their first date, she fell head over heels in love with the good-looking kid who loved to play baseball. He was witty and intelligent, and he wasn't full of himself, which she loved about him. He never said, "I want to be the greatest ever," or "I'm the best pitcher in the world right now." He was thoughtful and hopeful, saying that he would just like to get a chance to test himself against the best, maybe kick around the league long enough to earn a pension and live out his days with Nancy. Jacksonville manager Sully was also falling head over heels for his pupil's talent and poise, insisting that Seaver's 35-year-old brain attached to a 21-year-old body, and he's ready for the prime time. A sentiment that was echoed by Rochester Red Wings manager Earl Weaver, who said it's apparent that Seaver kid has been ready for the majors since his debut in this league. He has an excellent fastball and slider. He puts them precisely where he wants to, in and out, on the black, and mostly knee-high. After Jacksonville and Tom beat us, I called Orioles GM Harry Dalton and told him that Seaver is going to be sensational and the Orioles could give up a piece of the franchise and do well to get him. Having never won more than 66 games or finished higher than 9th place since coming to existence in 1962, the Mets underwent a 19-player overhaul under new GM Bing Devon. One of the new faces for in New York for the 1967 campaign, just as Hemus and Earl had predicted, was Tom Seaver. His baptism by Major League Fire begins the second game of the season when Mets manager Wes Westrom pencils him in to start against the Pittsburgh Pirates on April 13th as he yields 6 hits, 2 runs, 8 strikeouts, 4 walks, and 5 1/3 as teammate Chuck Estrada picked up the W in a 3-2 victory over the Buccos. By July, Seaver is cooking with straight gas with a 6-4 record, 2.60 ERA, and he is commanding sufficient respect throughout the league to merit a roster spot on the NL All-Star team. And we talked about this Midsummer Classic in the History of the All-Star Game pod I did a few years back. You can find that show in the banging ass catalog of archive shows I have at my disposal. But anyway, the game is at the Big A, Anaheim, California, and is deadlocked in the 14th inning after Tony Perez drops dong, giving the NL a 2-1 lead, prompting National League manager Walt Alston to face the AL batters in the bottom of the 15th to secure the win. And that was the night a national baseball audience was introduced to the 22-year-old kid with a 35-year-old pitching brain. He forced the first batter, slugger Tony Canigliaro, to fly out. He then walks Yaz, Bill Freehan flies out, and he polishes on Ken Berry, swinging through a letter-high fastball for strike 3. And from that moment on, the baseball universe takes notice, and Tom Terrific is bound for greatness and glory. Seaver rewrote the Mets pitching book records his rookie year, which, to be fair, wasn't that hard to do, considering the team he played for ended up in 10th inning, which was last in the National League, with 60 wins and 101 losses. But he has since held his grip in most of those categories. His 16 victories, 18 complete games, 170 strikeouts, 2.76 ERA. It set the new standard for the club. He also became the first Metropolitan in history to earn the National League Rookie of the Year. And even the normally reticent Hank Aaron lavished praise on the young righty, which only boosted Seaver's self-confidence even more, having his heroes sing his superlatives. As for Braves GM Bill Bartholomé, who his Braves went 0-4 versus Seaver that rookie campaign, all he could muster late in the contract nullification between Atlanta and Seaver was, "I get sick to my stomach every time he pitches." And even though the Mets were still a mess and lost 101 games in 1967, Terrific was like a giant breath of fresh air sweeping across Shea Stadium. Seaver was a flicker of hope. And I talked about this in the 1969 Amazin show. That's also in the archives, available for consumption. Even though the Mets were perennial losers, forcing Casey Stengel to openly opine that these boys create new ways of losing every day. Even though they were the laughing stock of the league, their fans were 110% behind them. No matter how embarrassing the loss of any specific day was. Gluttons for punishment? Maybe. Sadomasochists? Probably. But loyal? 150%. But Seaver didn't come to the park every day to fucking lose. He was a proud Trojan out of USC. He is conditioned to win. Often. Losing is unacceptable, and that competitive spirit was rubbing off on his teammates. They just needed to learn how to win. He continues to develop in 1968, does not fall prey to a sophomore jinx. He wins 16 games, strikes out 205 batters, commits only one error all year. And Seaver begins to get a sense that his teammates are buying into his win every game mentality, and the front office is investing in some pretty productive pieces that will serve them well down the road. They hired Gil Hodges to skipper the club, and then they acquired Tommy Agee to play center field and Jerry Grody behind the dish. And Jerry Grody just died a couple days ago. Rest in peace. Godspeed. That's sad. So, little by little, the young Metropolitans have a core of players like A.G., Cleon, Jones, Seaver, Nolan Ryan, Jerry Kuzman, Grody, Bud Harrelson. And they're all willing to run through a brick wall for manager Hodges. But if the 1969 Mets team was destined for miraculous immortality, it was certainly not evident from their opening day performance on April 8th when Seaver gets pounded on by the expansion Expos in 11-10 defeat. And the following weeks, they weren't much better as the Mets endured slumps, injuries, erratic defensive play. In May, Hodges tells the New York Raiders, his batters look like wooden soldiers right now. On May 21st, in Atlanta, Seaver shuts out the Braves, improving his record to 6-2. The Mets, meanwhile, even their team record to 18-18. And Tom is not satisfied with being at 500. Even though the club had probably never been 500 this late in May, ever. I mean, saying 500 is neither here nor there to me. Embracing mediocrity is not going to get us closer to the pennant. Diligence and luck, along with talent, were essential ingredients in the Mets' winning streak in late May and early June. For every player, there was a different highlight that augmented their confidence. But for the franchise, it was an extra inning clutch hit to win a contest on June 4th versus the Dodgers. By now, the Mets were in second place behind the Cubs, winning defeated the Padres on June 14th, improving his record to 10-3. The Amazin's mound excellence was becoming renowned throughout the league, with Tom, Jerry Kuzman, rookie Gary Gentry, Don Cardwell. The Mets upgraded their offense on June 15th when they acquired Don Clendenin in a trade from Montreal, a veteran first baseman who studied law in the offseason. And now with sterling pitching and defense, a solid offense, a hard-nosed manager, and a teacher in Gil Hodges, clubhouse chemistry, competent players, the Mets had no reason to look back. Only the Cubs stood in their way of their divisional crown. And all these factors set the stage for what was arguably the strongest game Seaver ever pitched, even more than his no-hitter for the Reds in 1978. The dominant Seaver was absolutely lights out when he comes to bat in the sixth. The Shea Stadium faithful gives him a standing O. And to him, it felt like he was floating on air. Up to this point, 18 Cubs had walked to the plate, and 18 Cubs walked back to the dugout with a crestfallen, confused look on their face. Don Kessinger led off the seventh with a fly out to left. Glenn Eckert flies out to right field. Billy Williams grounded out to Ed Charles, the third baseman. Seaver continues his mastery in the eighth, inducing Ron Santo into a center field flyout before striking out Ernie Banks and Al Spangler for strikeouts number 10 and 11. Shea Stadium, courtesy of Jim Bunning in 1964, had been the site of the first perfect game in the National League since 1988. Since 1888. And now it seemed like the perfect place for a repeat as Terrific takes the mound in the ninth. The crowd gasped as Randy Hundley led up with a line drive to the pitcher's mound that Seaver trapped and threw over to first for the out. Jim Qualls stepped to the plate, the only Cubs player to hit the ball hard all night. Seaver pitches him away, and Qualls unleashes a clean base hit to shallow left field, ending Tom's perfect game. The imperfect game has now become part of the Mets lexicon. The consummate professional Tom Terrific. He retires the last two batters, and he threw the first of his club record 5 one-hitters. The Mets won the game 4-0, defeating the front-runner Cubs, and it was at that moment the baseball universe realized the Mets are real deal Holyfield here. Now, the Mets did fade a little bit off their pace by late July, but the third-place Cardinals could not capitalize on their errors to overtake the Amazins in the standings. In August, the Mets faced a grueling test of endurance. 20 games in 20 days, including 4 double-headers against 3 California teams on the road. And while some teams may have flat-out capitulated to the exhausting weight of the schedule and transcontinental flights, the Mets seem to only get stronger, going 15-5 as the winner of 3 of those Golden State Marathon games. The franchise improved his record to 19-7, and he had not lost a game since August 5th when he dropped a no decision to the Reds hurler Gary Nolan, and he would be perfect in his final 6 decisions. On September 9th, the Mets take sole possession of first place, and 5 days later, they would capture the NL East divisional crown. And this was the first year of divisions, and as the team ace, with 25 wins under his belt, Seaver is given the ball for Game 1 of the very first NLCS versus the National League West winning Atlanta Braves. And I did a deep dive into the 1969 New York Mets amazing season, including a run through the NLCS versus the Braves, their miraculous upset of the mighty 1969 Baltimore Orioles in the World Series. So I'm gonna kind of cruise through with a slight refresher course here. But if you want to go in depth with the 1969 Amazing Mets, by all means, you check out that show in the archives. And that banging-ass catalog I've amassed, detailing over 250 years of baseball history. But 69 NLCS, Game 1, the Braves bats, they ambush Seaver behind the pitching of their ace, Phil Niekro, for 5 runs on 8 hits in 7 innings. With the Mets trailing by 1 in the 8th, the Amazins rallied for 5 runs to preserve the victory for Tom. And from then on, and through the World Series, no team was going to beat New York that year. They dispatched the heavily favored Braves in the next 2 games in an NLCS best-of-5 sweep, and they prepared themselves for the Orioles in the World Series. And most pundits and insiders figured the Orioles would sweep the Mets. But Orioles manager Earl Weaver never believed that. He had managed against Seaver and Koosman in the minors, and he knew they were going to be a handful. The days of Jimmy Pearsall running backwards around the bases, or Marv Thornberry's disqualified triple because he failed to touch first and second, those days are over. Yet one batter into the World Series, and Seaver surrenders a leadoff bomb to my good friend Don Buford, and the Mets look a little shaky here. In the fourth, the Orioles again have Seaver on the ropes, who allows 4 hits, including a double to my man, Mr. B. Played 3 more Oriole runs. Meanwhile, Orioles starter Mike Cuellar was masterful, only giving up 1 run to the Mets as the Orioles cruise to the 4-1 victory. And after the game, there was a rumor circulating that if the Mets won the World Series, then Seaver would take out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the United States to pull out of the Vietnam War. Now, there was zero truth to the rumor, but the talking head baseball insiders, oh my God, I'm so glad it wasn't fucking, social media back then. A non-story that people want to talk about. It happens all the time, but these talking head baseball insiders back then, they're openly wondering why Tom would lend his name to such a divisive cause. Well, he didn't. He addressed the rumor head on, and he said he didn't want to be used as a pawn in a political game. And as happenstance would have it, his next start was Moratorium Day, which was a nationwide protest against the conflict in Indochina. When he entered Shea, he was asked to don a black armband in recognition of the protests, but Seaver refused. Game 4 was a rematch of the series opener with Seaver and Cuellar set to square up. The Mets had won the last 2 games of the series, and Seaver looked almost as dominant as the game against the Cubs in June. He throws 8 shutout innings and held a 1-run lead on Clendenning's second inning blast. In the 9th, Boog Powell hits a single to advance my cousin Frank Robinson to third from first. Then my other cousin Brooks Robinson hit a screaming line drive in right field that Ron fucking Swoboda amazingly somehow grabs before it hits the Shea Stadium outfield crash, which scored Frank from third on the game-tying sac fly, but it really should have been a 2-run triple with Brooksy at third. And I've said it before here on BKP. That 1969 Mets team played probably the greatest outfield defense the World Series has ever seen, between Swoboda, Tommy and A.G., and Cleon Jones. They were out of this world. Despite losing the lead, Gil Hodges left Seaver in to pitch the 10th. In the bottom half of the frame, Jerry Grody led off with a double against Dick Hall. Rod Gasper comes in to pinch run. Pete Rickard is called in from the bullpen to face J.C. Martin, who is batting for Seaver. Martin bunts to the right side of the mound, and Rickard's throw glanced off Martin's wrist and bounced into right field, allowing Gasper to score from second. And Seaver would walk away with the only World Series win of his career. The next day, the Mets would finish off the Birds in one of the most stunning World Championship wins in baseball history. So, to recap here, he's a month shy of his 25th birthday. He's a leader, motivator, in the face of a franchise that defied all logic and expectations in just their 8th season of being in the big leagues. He led the NL with 208 strikeouts and a sparkling 2.21 ERA. He won the Cy Young Award and Sports Illustrated Sportsman of the Year. And he finished just 18 points shy of Willie Stretch McCovey and voting for League's MVP. He's showing up on the Ed Sullivan's television program. He bought a farmhouse on the mean streets of Greenwich, Connecticut. But with all the platitudes and praises heaped upon him, Seaver would always humbly remind you that he was the only Mets pitcher to lose a game in the 1969 World Series. Terrific would not rest on his laurels, though. The next season, he leads the league with 283 strikeouts and a 2.81 ERA. 19 of those 283 strikeouts were recorded on April 22nd versus the San Diego Padres, including the last 10 batters he faced. A mark that is still unmatched some 54 years later and counting. In 1971, he has a good year, as he's ever had. He set personal best with 289 strikeouts, a blinding 1.76 ERA to lead the National League in both categories. He had 20 wins, second most in the league, 4 fewer than that year's Cy Young winner, Ferguson Jenkins. Tragedy strikes in 1972 when Gil Hodges dies of a heart attack after playing a round of golf, a death that had as profound impact on Seaver as it did playing for the man. Under new skipper Yogi Berra, he led the club with 21 wins, 249 strikeouts. From 1967 to 1972, Seaver led all National League hurlers with 116 wins, 1,404 strikeouts, and only Bob Gibson's ERA of 2.42 was better than Tom's 2.44. In 1973, Seaver became the first pitcher to win the NL Cy Young Award without winning 20 games. Off to a promising start, the Metropolitans end April atop the NL East with a record of 12-8. But the team begins to wilt under the strain of injuries to Jerry Grody, Cleon Jones, Bud Harrelson, and Willie Mays. By June 25th, the Mets are in the basement of the East, 8.5 games behind the Northside Cubs. They enter July with a losing record, going 32-49 from mid-May to July. But there was hope amid the despair all year, and his blue and orange pinstripes were emblazoned with the number 41. After defeating Filthy on opening day, Seaver's consistently proved to be an anchor in the choppy swells of a tumultuous campaign. When the Mets went 30-35, Tom was 7-3. In a 3-week stretch of late May and early July, Seaver was the pitcher of record for the only 4 wins registered by New York. One of those games, May 29th, he struck out 16 Giants and was named NL Player of the Week. And he got even better when catcher Jerry Grody returned from an injury in late July. On September 21st, Seaver beat the Buccos to even the club record at 77-77, which in their mediocre division was good enough for first place. So he takes the mound on October 1st. He beats the Cubbies 6-4 for win number 19 and his final regular season victory to clinch the divisional title. Before the 2005 Padres, no NL team had ever finished first with a worse record as the Mets finished that season at 82-79. Seaver led the league with 251 strikeouts, 2.08 ERA, with 18 complete games, which tied him for the league lead with Steve Carlton. The Mets were on course to meet the Big Red Machine, Cincinnati Reds, for the right to play in the Fall Classic as the NL representative. Facing Jack Billingham, Seaver strikes out 13, helps his own cause by doubling in an RBI, but Pete Rose would drop dong in the 8th to tie the game, and Johnny Bench would walk it off in the 9th. The Mets bounce back and win games 2 on John Matlack's 2-hit shutout. The Mets take game 3 despite a nasty scrap between shortstop Bud Harrelson and Reds Pete Rose. A moment I talked about in the Willie Mays bio. The Mets won the game, but Pete Rose exacts his revenge in game 4 with a game-winning home run in the 12th to set up a rematch from game 1, Seaver versus Billingham. In the first inning, Ed Kranepool drove in 2 runs with a bases-loaded single, but the Reds counterattack when Dan Dreisen drives in Joe Morgan in the 3rd with a single. Rose would score the fifth from an RBI single by Tony Perez. But the Mets would bust the game open with a 4-run barrage in the home fifth to chase Billingham from the game, and none other than Willie Mays driving in the go-ahead run. Pinch hitting for Ed Kranepool, the 42-year-old Say Hey kid wrapped up bases loaded single to drive in Felix Milan. Seaver himself would lead up to 6 with a double, would score on Cleon Jones' single to put the Mets out in front 7-2 in the clinching game. Tug McGraw would come on to relieve Seaver, record the final 2 outs, and then scamper to the clubhouse as the fans stormed the Shea Stadium field. And people will always say that 1969 was a miracle season. I don't know. That team won 100 games. If you ask me, the 1973 Mets getting to the World Series is way more miraculous than what happened in 69. The 1973 Mets had no business getting to the dance. But with Seaver on the bump every 4 days, anything can happen. Against all probability, the Mets were returning to the W's on the World Series for the second time in 5 years. The underdog A's went on. The underdogs. The underdog Mets. They go on to face the defending champion Oakland A's. And the World Series I covered extensively in the Raleigh Fingers bio. After the team split the first 2 games, Seaver faced Catfish Hunter in Game 3. It was 40 degrees at game time at Shea that evening, but the Mets came out hot, ambushing Catfish with 2 runs right off the rip in the first. But Oakland comes back after back-to-back doubles by Sal Bando and Gene Tennis in the 6th. Bert Campanera slid off the 8th with a single, stole second, then scored on a Joe Reedus single to knot the game at 2s. Seaver exited after 8. Tugger pitched until the 10th. And Harry Parker would allow the game winner in the 11th. But the Mets would win the next 2 and head back to Cali, 1 win short of another world title. Yogi decides not to go with George Stone, but instead with Seaver, who was begging for the ball after only 3 days rest, to face a rested Catfish. Oakland scored early and held on to a 3-1 win that tied the series. Remarkably, the A's had yet to hit a bomb in this series, but 2 third-inning blasts by Campy and Reggie Jackson sank the Mets and Matlack 5-2. Despite the bittersweet ending, the 1973 campaign was stellar for Seaver, as he won a second Cy Young Award, was rewarded with a $172,000 contract. At that time, the largest contract ever for a pitcher in baseball history. $172,000 in 1973 is worth about $1.5 million today in the 2024 economy. In 1974, he was plagued by shoulder and hip ailments, and this is when New York Daily News writer begins his assault on Seaver's character and abilities, writing that Seaver is an agent of discontent among his teammates. In a summer of headlines dominated by the Watergate scandal, this Dick, young Dick, made it perfectly clear that Seaver had made his creep release, and it was only just the beginning. For the first time in his star-studded career, Seaver had an ERA over 3, and he failed to make the All-Star team. With a rejuvenated arm and a new pelvic structure, Tom returned to form in 1975. On September 1st, in the midst of a shutout versus Pittsburgh, he fans Manny Sanguillen in the 7th to become the first pitcher to strike out 200 batters in 8 consecutive seasons. Earlier that year, Dan Dreisen became the 2,000th strikeout victim. I keep saying Dreisen, it's Dreesen. Dan Dreesen became the 2,000th strikeout victim in his illustrious career in his 20th victory of the year game versus Cincinnati. He finished 22-9, and he wins his third Cy Young Award. At the end of the season, contract negotiations became messy as Seaver and the team squabbled over free agent dollars. And we talked about this in the Collusion Show last week, which, sidebar, I got a lot of messages about the Collusion Show, as people were really positive with me about that performance. I want to thank you very much, and I appreciate the kind words. But a little refresher here. So, Andy Messersmith and Dave McNally had played their entire 1975 season without a contract. On December 23rd, arbitrator Peter Seitz ruled that both players were free to negotiate new contracts to the highest bidder on the open market. The reserve clause that held true from 1880 to this 1975 ruling had been broken. Seaver, as the Mets union rep, worked to create an equitable negotiation environment for his fellow players now wanting to experience the rewards. Seaver asked for a 3-year, $825,000 deal, which is about $4.6 million today. And team president Donald Grant became so incensed that he no longer held, reserve clause dominion over these spoiled, unappreciative baseball players. He threatens to trade them to the Dodgers for Don Sutton. But one pitch into the 1976 season, and Tom became a 10-5 player, which was a coup for the players' union, meaning any player with 10 years of tenure and 5 years with the same team reserved the right to reject any trade, which left the Mets with very little time to develop a trade package here. So, rather than risk the PR nightmare, the Mets renegotiated with Tom, offering him a $225,000 incentive-laden deal through 1978. And though Tom would reluctantly agree, it destroyed any professional rapport that he had with Donald Grant. Now, $225,000 in 1976, it has the purchasing power of around $1.25 million today in 2024. His win-loss record dips in 76 to 14-11, but his offense only supported him with 15 runs combined in his 11 losses. But his 2.59 ERA is third best in the NL, and his 235 strikeouts earned him his fifth strikeout crown. And these numbers would be the last hurrah in Mets gear with Seaver at the height of his powers. And again, we touched on this last week in the Collusion Show. If you haven't heard that, you should definitely get on that. But the Mets reacted to baseball's new economic realities by failing to initiate any intention to sign any of the 24 free agents on the market, which left Seaver dismayed by his club's refusal to adapt to the new economic realities. With the contract squabble from the year before fresh in his cerebellum, he watches as other teams are signing players of star caliber. Across town in the Bronx, he watched the Yankees break off a 6-year, $2 million deal with pitcher Don Gullett as they snatch him away from the Reds, which, by extension, rendered Tom's deal from the year before pretty much obsolete. And Seaver begins to wonder if he should have just not signed the contract, filed for free agency, which pissed off Donald Grant when he heard this. He blasted terrific as an ingrate while bemoaning the system the players' union had brought forth. An acrimonious relationship between Grant and Seaver is beginning to boil, and most New York writers sided with Seaver in the feud that was quickly becoming public in the Big Apple. But there was one notable member of the press whom Grant found an ally in, and that was one of the more powerful sports voices in New York at that time, Dick Young. Dick labeled Tom as a troublemaker and insisted that no one wants him in their clubhouse or on their team. Every day, the Daily News was becoming like this battle page where Pro Seaver, Jack Lane, and Dick Young would spar through their columns, all the while Seaver was dominating on the mound. Nevertheless, Dick Young continues his barrage of attacks through the widely read sport pages of the newspaper daily. And he maintains that Seaver is a pouting, griping, morale-breaking clubhouse lawyer, poisoning the team, with the team flailing 13 games back in the standings, and after firing Joe Frazier, their third manager in 4 years, in 2 years, they replaced him with Joe Torre. And rumors began to circulate that Mets GM Joe McDonald was in discussion with the Reds GM Bob Howsam about a deal for Seaver. After Seaver destroys the Astros on June 12th, the Mets offered Tom an extension that would make it comparable to what free agents were being offered elsewhere. It was a 3-year extension which included a pay raise to $300K in 1979, $400K in 1980 and 1981. On June 14th, one day before the trade deadline, Tom appeared ready to agree in principle with the deal, and he asked McDonald to halt trade talks with Cincy. He planned to remain a Met. So it all looks good. The greatest player in franchise history is going to stay put. But on a plane ride to Atlanta, he is appalled by the alternative facts and baseless lie of a narrative that Dick Young is subscribing to in his article. The article basically said that Seaver and his wife Nancy were jealous of Nolan Ryan and the money that he was making with the California Angels. And incensed that Dick would just blatantly lie and compound it with taking shots at his wife, he tells PR Director Arthur Richmond to get me the hell out of here and tell Joe McDonald that everything we discussed last night is forgotten. It's fucking over. McDonald is now in a no-win, no-leverage situation to pull the trigger on a deal he regretted making. On June 15th, Tom Seaver was traded for a package of youngsters, all under the age of 26. Pitcher Pat Zachary, who died a few days ago, rest in peace. Infielder Doug Flynn and outfielder Steve Henderson and Dan Norman. For diehard Mets fans, the summer of '77 is symbolized best by the violence of the Son of Sam, a crippling blackout followed by massive looting and robberies, a bankrupt city, and the trade of Tom Seaver, forever known as the Midnight Massacre. And the deal was literally done in the wee hours of the morning, and the Mets faithful were shocked to see number 41 gone. And who the hell are these guys that we got back anyway? After an emotional press conference, Seaver rolled out, holding back the tears, heading for Montreal to meet his new teammates. And look, freaks, let's stick a pin in the story right here. When I come back, we'll dig into Acts 2 and 3 of this pitching icon, beginning with his years in Cincinnati and pitching for the Reds. You kind of just wish one of those execs on the Mets would have turned on the radio and listened to the words of this song. It's a living thing. What a terrible thing to lose. Don't you do it. Don't you do it. Let me hook up Gunner with treats for a great first segment ode. Collect my thoughts, hydrate, rip a tube or two, and return with more on Tom Seaver here at BKP and the Let's Talk Baseball Podcast Network. See you on the dark side of the moon, freaks.
Taking a dive, cause you can't help the slide floating downstream.
It was time to return to our regularly scheduled program.
Up into the air goes Tatis, and he robs him of a home run.
Walk-off grand slam by Bobby Witt Jr.
What a play by Baez. Are you kidding me?
A career-high 11 strikeouts, Justin Steele.
A game-tying grand slam from Pete Alonso.
There's a high fly ball, deep right field. Harper watches it fly.
The next 2-2.
You got it. There it is. He did it. A 40-70 season.
Baseball presents Big League Tips.
Here's how to figure an earned run average. First of all, take the total number of earned runs that you've allowed, say 20. You divide that by the number of innings that you've pitched, let's say 80. Now that'll give you a figure, 80 into 20, of .250. Now you take .250, multiply that by 9 to give you a number of runs per 9 inning. This would be 2.25. An ERA of that, you'd be pitching awfully well. Baseball fever. Catch it.
Howdy, y'all. This is Big Tex Gage Gein, executive producer of Backwards K-Pod. In Texas, we do everything big. After football and golf, there's probably nothing I love more than going fishing and enjoying a good crawfish boil. The only thing I dislike about going fishing is the lingering odor it can leave on your hands afterwards. Well, the Fish and Hand Cleaner is an all-natural liquid soap perfect for overpowering fish and bait odors from your hands. I can't tell you how many times I've eaten steamed crabs, lobster, shrimp, crawfish, and then washed my hands with regular soap, only to touch my eyes half hour later, and my face begins to melt off due to the damn Cajun Old Bay spices. Well, we also have a hand cleaner specifically formulated to use after eating shellfish and other seafoods. Perfect for cleaning spicy, smelly hands after a Texas-sized seafood feast. In these cases, don't settle for anything less than our crawfish hand cleaner, our crab hand cleaner, or the fish and hand cleaner. An ingenious trifecta of natural hand soaps developed and owned by a disabled Navy veteran. He and Jake have a true connection, as they were boot camp shipmates all the way back in 1989. So he is family, folks, and one thing we do here at the Let's Talk Baseball Podcast Network is look out for family. So you can support 2 grassroots companies by 2 former shipmate Navy vets. Crushing big bowls of shellfish or fishing on the banks of your favorite river while you listen to BKP. Sounds like a great day. You know, in fact, hey Mom, where are my poles? I'm gone fishing. There's also a buffalo wing hand cleaner in development as we speak. To check all of the incredible products of this great company, you can go to www.crawfishhandcleaner.com or call the home offices at 713-588-0290. That's 713-588-0290 to support the grassroots company that supports your grassroots podcast show. That's crawfishhandcleaner.com or 713-588-0290 to prepare for your summertime shellfish feast or that fishing trip you're planning. crawfishhandcleaner.com.
There has never been a no-hit game pitched by a Cincinnati Reds pitcher here at Riverfront. The last Reds no-hitter thrown was back on the 30th of April, 1969 by Jim Maloney. At Crosley Field, he no-hit the Houston Astros 10-0. Seaver is a strike away. He stretches. He checks the runner. He pitches. He pitches high a fastball, and it's 1-2. They are are standing all over the ballpark. Hendrick waiting on Seaver's 1-2 pitch. Tom sets, he kicks and fires. He pops it up, and it's going to be out of play, directly back of the plate. So Tom Seaver now a strike away from his first major league no-hitter. The Reds leading at 4-0 in the ninth inning. Hendrick puts a head of the bat on the plate. Werner hangs a sign. Seaver with a pause, the check and the pitch. He bounces to first base. Greason has it. He goes to the bag, and Seaver's got it. Tom Seaver has pitched his first major league no-hitter, and this one belongs to the Reds. Seaver is being mobbed at first base as George Hendrick bounces a routine two-hopper to Danny Greason, and the 38,216 at Riverfront Stadium are standing. Tom Seaver has thrown the first no-hitter of his major league career, the 14th no-hitter in the long history of the Cincinnati Reds, and he did it in almost routine fashion tonight. He throws his hat high over his head, acknowledging the applause and the recognition of this crowd at Riverfront Stadium. Tom Seaver has thrown the second no-hit, no-run game. In the National League in 1978, Bob Force did it 2 months ago to the very day when he no-hit the Philadelphia Phillies 4-0, and Tom Seaver has no-hitted the St. Louis Cardinals here tonight against the crowd here, a tremendous crowd, and Seaver winning it 4-0, his first major league no-hitter, and what a ball game.
Baby, if you've ever wondered whatever became of me, I'm living on the air in Cincinnati, WKRP.
Okay, nerds, welcome back to Backwards K-Pod at the Let's Talk Baseball Podcast Network. And this week we've been witnessing the rise of the terrific Tom Seaver, the kid out of Fresno, California, who took a most circuitous road to play for the Mets at the expense of the Atlanta Braves. And within 2 years of joining the Major League ranks, he leads the former laughingstock Mets to a world championship in 1969. And it appears as though the New York franchise will have their first career lifelong Hall of Fame icon. But the Sites decision breaks the reserve clause that has indentured players to team and owners from 1880 to 1976. The Mets are not willing to play ball in the new economic landscape, and a rift develops between the club and the franchise, Tom Seaver. To make matters worse, the bad feelings are exacerbated by New York Daily News sports columnist Dick Young, who has a real obsessive hard-on for Seaver and has no problem setting the narrative with the Mets faithful with daily troves of lies and alternative facts. And it looks like a deal was imminent between the Seaver and the Mets, but all the goodwill goes up in smoke when Dick Young suggests in a column that Seaver and his wife Nancy are jealous of Nolan and his wife Ruth Ryan. It was a baseless report based on zero facts, as Tom and his wife had nothing but love for the Ryans, and Tom adores Nolan like a little brother. When Seaver reads this horse shit, it's the last straw, and he demands a trade from the Mets, who sell him off in the wee hours of the morning. When Mets fans awaken the next day, they go to read Dick Young's column and learn that number 41 is a Met no more, and what has been called the Midnight Massacre, June 15, 1977, when he is traded to the Redlegs. And even though he was disappointed with the way things worked out in Queens, he did feel some solace in the fact that he no longer had to battle versus the Big Red Machine and their vaunted lineup of Rose, Morgan, and Bench. Though victorious in 2 previous World Series, the Reds trailed the Dodgers in 1977 in the NL West standings. Tony Perez was gone, but George Foster had emerged as a power threat whose 52 home runs were the most by a slugger in a dozen years. Despite going 14-3 with a 2.34 ERA for the Queen City Reds, Seaver was unable to reignite his teammates to overtake the Dodgers in the standings. And he brought scores of fans to Riverfront Stadium the days that he pitched. Of all the stars on that Reds team, he was the draw. And teammates felt like he was a joy to be around no matter what Dick Young was babbling on about. The veteran team accepted him immediately, and Tom went to work mentoring the pitching staff. Seaver, who hadn't really bonded with the manager since Gil Hodges, he worked well and admired Sparky Anderson. Expectations were high for the 1978 Reds to reestablish dominance in the NL West. Seaver did his part going 16-14 with 226 strikeouts and a 2.88 ERA. On June 16th, he finally achieved the no-hitter moment that eluded him for years in Queens when he pitches a no-hitter versus the Cards. And you just heard that at the top of the break here. The Reds, however, fell short of standing to the Dodgers again, and Dick Wagner was hired as the new Reds GM. Now, this Dick right here decided he wanted his own manager to dug out, and in his infinite wisdom, he fires Sparky Anderson. 1979 saw Seaver's performance challenged by injury, but he still managed to win 14 of the last 15 games he pitched. And after back-to-back bridesmaid seasons, the Reds win the West again under new manager John McNamara. But it was the We Are Family Pirates, a team we have highlighted in our collection of ball players and their stories in that banging-ass Baltimore archives, led by Pop Stargell with their stovepipe hats and blazing stars, who were victorious in their white-knuckle race with the Expos over in the East. It would be the 4th league championship of the decade between the two proud franchises. This time, though, the Reds were without Charlie Hustle, Pete Rose, who had moved on to Filthy as a free agent. And even though Terrific limited the Buccos to 2 runs on 5 hits in Game 1, Pirates ace John Candelaria, the Candyman, was equally impressive. Pops drops game-winning dog on Tom Hume's lip in the bottom of the 11th. I mean, he just splooged ropes all over his face, and the Pirates went on to sweep the Reds before defeating the Orioles for the 2nd time in a decade in the World Series. Seaver's 10-8 season in 1980 was marred by disappointment. The Reds finished 3rd, and he suffered from arm troubles for the first time in his career. The following season was a downer as well, but for vastly different reasons. Although the Reds posted the best record in baseball that year, a midseason player strike resulted in a unique split-season format. Unfortunately, the Reds finished 2nd in both halves and were forced to watch the Dodgers and Astros on television. Moreover, Tom's record of 14-2 represented the highest winning percentage in either leagues. Unfortunately, his comeback season coincided with Fernando Mania that gripped the baseball conscience, the pandemonium surrounding Dodgers rookie phenom Fernando Valenzuela. We got to do a Fernando show. The 1981 season did see Seaver reach his 3,000 strikeout plateau when he dusted off Keith Hernandez of the Cardinals on April 8th. As the 1980s rolled along, defections in Cincinnati continued in the face of the new free agency dollars. Ken Griffey Sr. and George Foster were traded, and Dave Collins was lost to free agency. Consequently, the Reds plummeted to the division cellar in 1982 with an abysmal 61-101 record. Not even Seaver was immune, going 5-13 with a bowling shoe ugly 5.50 ERA. The Reds, coming off their worst record in franchise history, are eager to part ways with their now 38-year-old pitcher with the suspect shoulder. But there was one team very enthusiastic about trading for Seaver's services. In 1980, the Mets had been sold to a consortium led by publisher Nelson Doubleday and developer Fred Wilpon. And they pretty much gave GM Frank Cashin free rein and a blank checkbook to field a contender. And it was a struggle at first. Not even the acquisition of George Foster or a new manager, George Bamberger, could lift the Mets in 1982. Cashin trades 2 minor league players of Cincy for Seaver on December 16th, 1982. By now, Donald Grant had retired, and Dick Young was now reduced to journalistic obscurity, except for whenever anyone discusses Tom Seaver in his prime at the Mets. And the coast was clear for Seaver's return. Over 48,000 fans flocked Shea on April 5th, 1983 to watch Tom Terrific those 6 shutout innings against the Phillies in his return. And that was his 14th opening day assignment. He was the Mets' most durable pitcher, tying Mike Torres with 34 starts and leading the staff with 135 strikeouts and 231 innings pitched. However, not Seaver, rookie Darryl Strawberry, or midseason trade acquisition Keith Hernandez could save the club. Seaver goes 9-14 in New York's 7th consecutive losing season. As a result of the 1981 players' strike, there was an established pool of players from which teams could select players as compensation for free agent losses. And the Mets are anxious to hold on to their youth. That would eventually lead them to a World Series title. And they couldn't imagine anyone would have interest in a 39-year-old pitcher whose value was higher in New York because of his basic draw appeal. The 68-94 Mets decided to keep their younger players, but they lost their franchise again. Meanwhile, on the south side of Chicago, the Chi Sox had just lost pitcher Dennis Lamb to the Blue Jays as a free agent, and they were eligible to take an unprotected player from any club as compensation. On January 20th, 1984, they selected Tom Seaver. On the heels of winning 99 games in 1983 before losing in the ALCS to the eventual world champion Baltimore Orioles, the White Sox were thrilled to bring in the veteran right-hand pitcher. Seaver achieved his 300th win on Phil Rizzuto Day in the Bronx when he defeated the Yankees on August 4th, 1985. The White Sox had capitalized on a weak AL West in 1983, winning that division by 20 games of the Royals. However, their style of winning ugly proved to be a one-year wonder. And though he won a respectable 15 games in 1984 and 16 in 1985, the White Sox had returned to mediocrity. He did enter the record books by being the pitcher of record on May 9th, 1994, when Harold Baines clobbers a game-winning dong in the 25th inning. The game had been stopped after 17 innings and resumed the next afternoon. As the scheduled starter later that day, Seaver became the first hurler since Wilbur Wood to win 2 games played on the same day. As the 1986 season approached, Seaver could see the end of his road on the horizon. After his mother died that spring, he wanted to spend more time with Nancy and his 2 daughters, and he asked to be traded to New York or Boston to be closer to his Connecticut home. On July 29th, the White Sox acquiesced, sending him to Boston for utility man Steve Psycho Lyons, reuniting Seaver with former Red skipper John McNamara. led by perennial batting champ Wade Boggs, outfielders Dwight Evans and Jim Rice, and pitching sensation Tom Seaver 2.0, if you will, Roger Clemens. The Red Sox are poised to make their first World Series appearance since 1975. After a tight pennant race with their rival Bombers and an exciting LCS victory over the Angels, the Red Sox did return to the Fall Classic, ironically, versus his former franchise, the New York Mets. After posting a 7-13 record in an injury-plagued season, he was left off the postseason roster, and he was unavailable in the pivotal Classic Game 6 when Johnny Mack needed a right-handed pitcher, and he sat in the dugout and watched in horror as a ground ball behind the bag gets past Buckner. And then the next day, when his former team wrapped up their first world title since he was the ace way back in 1969. Seaver did put on the 41 one more time in blue and orange. His attempt to come back in 1987 with the Mets proved fruitless. And Seaver announced his retirement on June 22nd. A year later, he joined Casey Stengel and Gil Hodges on the short list of Mets notables to have their numbers retired. Most of the Mets records should stand the test of time, including 198 wins, 171 complete games, 44 shutouts, 395 starts, 3,045 innings pitched, 2,541 strikeouts, and a sparkling 2.57 ERA. After living out most of his adult life in Connecticut, Seaver would later return to his native California, establishing Seaver's Vineyard with his wife Nancy and Calistoga. And Briggs, I want to give a free plug to the Seaver's family wine. I personally ordered 2 bottles of Cabernet Sauvignon just to have a piece of Tom Seaver. I'm more of a moonshine guy. I'm not even sure if I'll ever drink it. Maybe when I get 1 million downloads, I'll crack that in celebration. But I really just wanted to have something of Tom's in my collection because I know he had a real passion for his grapes and wines. If you want to get some, that phone number is 707-709-8314. That's 707-709-8314. And to me, that's more special than a piece of paper and a scrapbook with his signature. And with his foray into the wine industry, as well as broadcasting work, Seaver represented a new breed of player, independent, cerebral, and educated. As the New York Mets franchise player, he was a spokesman for the blue-collar suburbanites and immigrants, unified in solidarity by their team's emergence as world champions in 1969. He was a man of profound opinion, though he preferred not to disclose his personal stances on controversial issues away from baseball and of any political nature. And even though he worked tirelessly for players' rights and freedom, he never once filed for free agency. Though he most notably, he probably should have in 1976. The 2019 season marked the 50th anniversary of Neil Armstrong's small step for man and Tom Seaver's giant leap for Metkind. Sadly, the semi-centennial celebration at Citi Field went on with the glaring absence of the franchise. In March of 2019, Seaver announced he was retiring from the public eye after being diagnosed with dementia. The Mets changed their address for Citi Field from 123-01 Roosevelt Avenue to 41 Tom Seaver Way. Among the celebrations of that amazing 1969 year was the unveiling of a beautiful Tom Seaver statue at the entrance to the Mets crib, forever immortalizing the first champion in Mets history. And the miracle that season was out at Flushing Meadows. On September 2nd, 2020, baseball fans were shocked and saddened to learn that the noblest warrior Met of them all had passed away 2 days before, as Nancy and his 2 daughters, Sarah and Ann, said goodbye to him on August 31st at the age of 75. Tom had been battling Lyme disease for a better part of 3 decades. Ultimately, he would succumb to complications of Lewy body dementia and COVID-19. He was fearless, always waiting for his next game to dirty his right knee. I mean, what can you say about Tom frickin' Seaver? In one word, he was terrific. And freaks, I think this is where we're going to roll up this fatty and end this week's topic with a big, beautiful backwards K next to the franchise's name here in our scorebook. I see Gunner tapping his left paw. He's ready to go to the bully. He's ready to catch these wormholes, anomalies, and get you all back to your loved ones at Terrapin Station 2024. So, while he plants our course back, let's take one final look at those so lovely Hall of Fame stats Tom Seaver left behind on that crazy dope resume of his.
To Saint Production.
George Thomas Seaver, a.k.a. Tom Seaver, a.k.a. Tom Terrific, a.k.a. The Franchise. Born November 17, 1944, Fresno, California. Died at the age of 75 years old on August 31st, 2020 in Calistoga, California. Drafted by the Los Angeles Dodgers in the 10th round of the 1965 MLB Junior Amateur Draft out of USC, and the Atlanta Braves in the first round of the 20th pick overall in the 1966 MLB Junior Amateur Draft. Attended Fresno High School and the University of Southern California. On April 13, 1967, he becomes the 12,556th man in the history of the planet to join the MLB fraternity when he makes his Major League debut versus the Buccos, going 5 1/3, surrendering 2 earned runs on 6 hits while striking out 8 and walking 4. A brilliant 20-year Major League Baseball career with the Mets, Reds, White Sox, and Red Sox. 1967 NL Rookie of the Year, 12-time All-Star, 3-time Cy Young Award winner, 1969, 1973, and 1975, 3-time ERA champion, 1970, 71, 73, 4-time Pitcher of the Month, 6-time Pitcher of the Week. His 109.9 wins above replacement is the 22nd best of all time, and his pitching WAR of 106 is the 7th highest total ever. 311 wins, 18th most in Major League Baseball history, 205 losses for a .603 winning percentage, 2.86 ERA, 4,783 innings pitched, 19,369 batters faced. That's the 19th most ever. 656 games, 647 of those were starts. 231 complete games, 100 most in baseball. 61 shutouts, 7th most. He did have 1 save in his career. 3,640 strikeouts, the 6th highest total in Major League history. 1,390 walks, the 19th most ever. 1.21 WHIP, 3.04 FIP, and 127 ERA plus. He holds the NL record for the lowest earned run average for a pitcher with at least 200 wins and most consecutive seasons with 200 or more strikeouts, with 9 from 1968 to 1976. In 1992, he took his appropriate place among the immortals when he was voted into the National Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York on 425 of 430 ballots for 98.8% of the vote, which was the highest percentage until Mo Rivera went unanimous in 2019. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, seamheads of all ages, This is the story of Tom Terrific Seaver, the franchise. I hope you guys enjoyed picking up what I was throwing down this week. And I promise, freaks, I'll try to be even better next week. Man, Tom Seaver in the collection. I gotta tell you, I love this collection we are amassing here. And if I'm being honest, I'm just getting started, freaks. I will never charge you for the baseball content here at BKP. I'm just going to keep coming through every week with that free baseball smoke.
You don't want that smoke.
And I'm going to keep it consistent like the new freak on the Orioles team, number 7, Jackson Holiday. If you enjoy the programming, please leave me a rate and review. Support the sponsors, Budweiser, Old Bay, and of course, Laparo's hand cleaner, no mo smelly hands. Share with your cement buddies. I'm all tangled up in the wet brow. Real easy to find me. And I got my boy Gunner racing down the tracks, getting you nerds back to Terrapin Station. And with the Tom Seaver story getting smaller and smaller in my rear views, I now turn my attention to our never say die baseball hydra, and I chop the head off that beast, only to see 2 more baseball topics appear in its place. Next week, we're going to take a deep dive into the Doc Ellis LSD no-hitter game versus the Padres. What? Ellis maintains that the night before he was partying all night and he forgot he had to pitch the next game and he took a hit of some powerful window pane blotter and then went out to a no-no at San Diego. I'm going to get after it and really dig into this game, see what we come up with. Something a little outside of my bubble. I always try to push the creative envelope. Sounds like it could be interesting, but look, y'all already know. That's another story. For another pod. Here at Backwards K-Pod, where we collect ball players and their stories. Check me out on TikTok and YouTube, yo. That's at Backwards K-Pod. The X handle is at back_K_podcast. Or I'm probably just chilling with my crew at the Let's Talk Baseball Podcast Network group page on Facebook. Answer the questions so I know you're not a Russian bot. Come on in and join the chaos. Okay, freaks. I think I've accomplished my goals this week. Vinny Vassie. I came. I saw. I kicked this show's ass, kid. Thank you so much for hanging in there with me. Allow me to do the thing I love most in the world. And that is opine the seams with all of you nerds. Parents, if you see your kid sitting on the couch, they got their noses in the phone looking unproductive and bored AF. By all means, take those little monkeys outside and play a game of catch. Thank y'all for coming out. God bless. And win the day. And like my boy Shea Hillenbrand told me in our one-on-one sparring session in the dojo a few years back, you go to hell, Andy Pettit. Me and my felonious feline of co-host Charlie Guns, we're throwing up our Gunnar Henderson jaw. That's our number 2s. As in, peace. See you freaks for the Doc Ellis LSD no-hitter next week. That's gonna be crazy. I love you guys. See ya.